Okay, so thank you all for coming and giving me the opportunity to share some of my experiences traveling in India for 2 months this winter, January and February. I almost didn't make it because one of our friends discouraged me very strongly from traveling to India, telling me, don't go to India. If you go to India, you're going to be killed. You can't even cross the street.
Never said that.
Well, I didn't mention any names. Yeah, so how this trip came about, this would have been in June 2017, a friend of mine, an Indian monk named Bhante Ananda, came to the US and he visited me here in Twangyan Monastery. And he asked first if he could send 3 of his students to stay with us for a summer retreat, 3 of his senior students. And so they came and they stayed with us over the past summer. This was Bhante Panyarakita, Jnanarakita, and Buddhapala. And then the second thing he told me, Bhante Ananda said, please come to India during the winter of 2019, that he is the General Secretary of the Mahabodhi Society of Bangalore, and they have a retreat center about an hour outside Bangalore, and he asked me to come to conduct some retreats at the retreat center. So I agreed to go in January 2019, and so I left here on January 3rd and arrived in Mumbai on January 4th, late at night, and then the next day I took the connecting plane to Bangalore. Then I connected. Okay, so I came to Bangalore and they brought me directly to the retreat center on January 5th, and the retreat was scheduled to start on January 7th, which didn't really allow me much time to recover from the jet lag, because for 2 nights I virtually didn't sleep at all. Arriving in Bangalore on January 5th, I had to spend the whole night sitting up in the Mumbai airport, since I arrived in Mumbai about 10 p.m. and the connecting flight to Bangalore was at 6:15 a.m. the next morning. And so you have to report in for the flight starting about 4:15 a.m. So it would have been pointless for me to spend the night someplace in Mumbai. So I just sat in a comfortable seat at the airport, waiting for the hours to roll by. Okay, when I had the idea to go to India to conduct these retreats, one idea started to take root in my mind and became almost an obsession. And this was to do a long walk across part of India, not preparing any places to stay in advance, not taking money, not planning my meals in advance, but just leaving everything to chance. And yeah, I planned the route fairly carefully, and that this was sort of a driving motivation for me, almost an obsession. But Bhante Ananda, my friend in Bangalore, and others discouraged me from making that walk. But I did it anyway. We'll see, we'll get to that. Okay, so let us start. Yeah, so first, I conducted the retreat at the retreat center it's about an hour, the Bangalore Mahabodhi Retreat Center, about an hour outside of Bangalore. And the picture's not so interesting. They're just sort of group pictures. There are several monks, mainly Indian monks, and people from different parts of India, mainly from the greater Bangalore area. I look very tired here, because not only did I have the jet lag hanging over me, but on the 2nd or 3rd day in India, I got a sore throat, but I had to continue teaching the retreat. despite the sore throat. And so this was a group of people who participated in the retreat. And what I found rather interesting and puzzling, you can see the participants here and in the other photographs here. When we have retreats here at Zhuangyan Monastery and other places where I've attended retreats or led retreats, there's almost always a pretty even balance of men and women. Usually, actually, the number of women is a bit more than the number of men. But in the two retreats I conducted outside Bangalore, there were very few women, many more men. And I asked them, why is that the case? And the answers were not quite satisfying to me. They said, oh, the women are obliged to stay at home to look after the family, or the women don't like to travel alone without a male accompanying them. So you can see here, there were just 4 women, or maybe there are 6 women on this retreat. All the others male. You're here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 women. Okay, now this retreat outside Bangalore took place from January 7th through the midday of January 11th. Then, starting in the evening of January 11th in Hyderabad, which is quite a distance from Bangalore, it's in the state of Telangana. The Mahabodhi Society has a vihara, a monastery, in Hyderabad, or Secunderabad, the twin city of Hyderabad. And the Mahabodhi Society had received a gift of Buddha relics from a prominent monk in Thailand. And on that weekend of January 12th and 13th, they were going to have the ceremony to install those Buddha relics in a stupa that they had constructed on the premises of the Mahabodhi Monastery in Hyderabad. And so they invited me to be like the special guest who would deposit the Buddha relics into the stupa, the top of the stupa. So let's get these pictures. I think this is arrival in Hyderabad. And maybe if some of you might recognize this monk here, the regulars who have been coming here, this is Bhante Panyarakita, one of the 3 monks who spent the summer retreat here last year. And this is Bhante Ananda, the one who originally invited me to come to India. And this is the monastery, the Hyderabad Buddha Vihara, Buddhist Vihara. And when those 3 Indian monks came to stay here, the 3 of them were living in one big room on the ground floor of Taishu Hall. And they were very happy and humble to humbly accept that accommodation. But then when I came to Hyderabad and I saw this as Venerable Buddha Pala's monastery, it's almost like a palace. Then I was almost a bit embarrassed that I had him lodged just in that room on the ground floor in Taishu Hall. You see, it's quite a palatial monastery. And it's all lit up for this special occasion. Yeah, this is Venerable Jnanarakita. He was another one of the 3 monks who spent the summer retreat here. And he is actually based in a state called Tripur, which is in the far northeast of India. But he came to Hyderabad especially for the ceremony. And this is the stupa in which the relics are going to be enshrined. And at this point, the top of the stupa is open, because the relics will be put in a little chamber on the top of the stupa. This is another shot from the distance. Close-up shot. Okay, this is the ceremony that was taking place on the day before the installation of the relics. This would have been on Saturday, January 12th, where the relics were put up on a kind of pedestal, and an all-night chanting of sutras and Abhidharma text was taking place in order to sort of strengthen the spiritual vibrations in the monastery. So this is all of the monks from the Mahabodhi Society. They came from different monasteries to congregate in Hyderabad for the ceremony. Yeah, the relics at this point are up here on the top of this pedestal. Okay, now they're going to prepare the relics for an exhibition of the relics. I think this was on the afternoon of January 12th, on Saturday afternoon. And you'll actually see the Buddha relics very close up. I managed to climb up and get some good shots of them. So at this point, the relics are inside this little casket. And this is Bhante Ananda. He's going to open the casket in order to display the relics. So I think he's making first a flower offering. Yeah, he makes the flower offering. Then he takes the casket. He opens the top cover. And then the relics are inside the smaller casket. He takes that up, pays homage to it, and then puts it on this display counter. And now the top is opened. And you could see the relics inside. There'll be a better shot. Yeah, here you could see very, very precisely the relics. These are bone relics of the Buddha. Okay, and then the next day another shot of the relics. Okay, so it says the Buddha Dhatu Stupa, the holy relics of the Buddha made available by Venerable Thira Chito, usually known as Achan Tun of Thailand, then enshrined by the monastic order led by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi from the USA, with the presence of some other monks. Okay, now we come to the ceremony. This will be on the morning of January 13th, Sunday morning. So we're circling the stupa, again circling the stupa. Then each of the monks, some of the elder monks made little speeches about the Buddha relics. Then everybody is congregating as the relics are brought down from the shrine room of the monastery. Now they're brought down for the enshrinement in the stupa. You can see there's a kind of parasol being held over them. And if you look closely, whoops, let's go back. Nope. And this one, if you look closely, you can see the little casket here being carried out from the shrine room. And now the casket is being prepared for installation. And then what we had to do, what they did is to construct a kind of, out of pieces of wood and planks of wood, a kind of staircase that they attached to the upper level of the stupa. And we had to climb up that, a number of the elder monks, to get to the top of the stupa in order to deposit the relics in them. And it seemed a bit precarious position. I was thinking all along that this makeshift ladder is going to collapse while we're up on the on the top of the stupa, and then the next day the Hyderabad newspaper would have flash headlines, "Tragedy at Buddhist Vihara in Hyderabad." Yeah, we had to walk up these kind of makeshift steps of planks of wood. And we're up here looking down at the crowd below. Yeah, and this is now, I guess it doesn't go any lower, but the casket is being suspended by these ropes, and I'm lowering that platform into the top of the stupa. And then Bhante Ananda will take the casket off the platform and deposit it inside the stupa. Yeah, so this is the view, the bird's eye view that we bird monks had from the top of the stupa. So you could see what the consequences would have been if that ladder collapsed under us. Okay, so that's the end of the ceremony. Okay, so this was January 13th. Yeah, that's the end of this. And then I wanted to show you, I took some separate shots of the friezes. Those are the design panels around the base of the stupa. This is quite magnificent art. It's a kind of art tradition that has been transmitted down through the centuries. So this is done by hand craftsmen who I saw working at the monastery to construct these friezes, these little panels that look almost exactly like the panels on the ancient stupas of Amaravati and of South India from the maybe 3rd, 4th centuries. So this is the conception of the Buddha. The Bodhisattva is descending, probably he's represented by the sphere, descending into his mother's womb while she is asleep. And this is Mahamaya. She's giving birth to the Bodhisattva in the Lumbini Park. According to the tradition, she gave birth standing up, holding onto the branch of a tree. And then you could see that there are deities, devas, who are coming to attend on her. And then she has her human, her personal attendants. I don't yet see the Bodhisattva. Probably in this stage of Indian art, perhaps the Bodhisattva was not yet represented in physical form. No, that's not the case, because we'll see that there are images of the Buddha himself. Yeah, this would be Prince Siddhartha in the palace as a prince, attended by female musicians and dancing girls. And as they fall asleep, he's probably thinking that he's already becoming disillusioned with sensual pleasures and thinking of renunciation. Here he's making his trip outside the palace in his chariot, and here is the old man walking by, the old man with a walking stick. Then he passes a sick man and gets down in order to try to help the sick man. Then he comes across a funeral procession with a corpse being carried. And then he encounters the figure of a sannyasi, a wandering monk, which inspires him with the idea of renunciation. Here, Prince Siddhartha leaves the palace on his horse, intending to enter the forest. Here he is as an aspirant for enlightenment, engaged in the ascetic practices. Here he's accompanied by the 5 disciples. I guess here the 5 disciples are leaving him, abandoning him because he has taken food. So when he gave up his ascetic practices, the disciples thought that he had given up the quest for enlightenment and they abandoned him. So this must be the attack by Mara. Probably this is Mara with the spear. Or I think this is Mara on the elephant, and these are Mara's lieutenants, all trying to frighten and intimidate the Bodhisattva so he'll rise up and depart from the Bodhi tree. And this must be after the enlightenment, where he's being saluted by the devas, by the deities. I don't know this scene, but here he's obviously the Buddha already. Since initially there were 5 disciples, but I don't see why there are 6 here. So these are various scenes from the life of the Buddha. Probably here he's receiving the bamboo grove, I think, from King Bimbisara. Or it could be that he's receiving the Jeta's grove from Anathapindika. Here, just some scenes of the Buddha teaching. This is a scene where the Buddha tames the wild elephant. Devadatta, the Buddha's evil cousin, tried to kill the Buddha, and one of his tactics was to unleash this wild elephant to come running at the Buddha, to stamp upon the Buddha and kill him. But the Buddha looked at the elephant and radiated his loving kindness to the elephant. And so when the elephant reached the Buddha, it stopped and bowed down in homage to the Buddha. Okay, here some devotee making offering to the Buddha. And this must be the scene of the parinirvana, the passing away. All of this quite significant today as we are in the Vesak season. More scenes. I don't know the meaning of this. Actually, these are back to the beginning. Okay, so those are the friezes. They are actually at the base of that stupa at the monastery in Hyderabad. And since we were there, it's only a few hours drive, about a 4-hour drive to Nagarjunakonda. Nagarjunakonda is the place considered the site of the main monastery of the great Buddhist philosopher, Nagarjuna. And so they don't know exactly what Nagarjuna's monastery, exactly where it was, but the ruins, that is the area where Nagarjuna flourished, and there are ruins of ancient Buddhist monasteries in that place. And so some of us made a day trip to Nagarjunakonda, and that whole area has been, for the purpose of irrigation, has been flooded by, I think it's the Kaveri River. And so a giant lake has been created as a source of irrigation. And in the middle of that lake, there is an island, and many of the ruins of the monasteries have been brought to that island. And so the lake is called Nagarjuna Sagar, Nagarjuna's lake, and the ruins, some ruins of the monastery are on the island, other ruins are in the surrounding area. And what has been created by the Indian Tourist Department, or maybe it's the Telangana Tourist Department, is a place called Buddhavana, the Buddhist Grove, which reconstructs the ancient monastery of Amaravati with many of the statues and design elements of the ancient monastery. So this is one of those panels, kind of lotus flower. There are various scenes on the outskirts of the Buddha Vana, various scenes of everyday Indian life from this could be about 3rd, 4th century. This seems to be a kind of sport that men are playing. Let's bring it to full size. And some of these, you think for a monastery, they're very, very sensual imagery. I just sometimes wonder, with imagery like this, how young monks in their early 20s would have gotten through the monastic life. So dancing girls, I guess this is like the harvest festival. Or maybe it's a ceremony where they might be taking the Buddha relics in a little casket and parading them through the town. Yeah, here they're paying homage to the wheel of Dharma. And this is an image of the Buddha's footprints. This is a 5-headed naga, a serpent, a cobra. According to tradition, there was a 7-headed cobra that shielded the Buddha right after his enlightenment on a rainy day to cover up his head like an umbrella so that the Buddha wouldn't get wet. And this is an image of the original swastika, which was misappropriated and abused by the Nazis. But the original significance of the swastika was a sign of good fortune, not of violence and destruction. Again, paying homage to the wheel of Dharma. This is a very common motif in these friezes along the walls outside the monastery. Here, the man is trying to persuade his female partner to partake of some intoxicating drink, but she coyly rejects his offer. Yeah, this is the most ancient monasteries don't actually represent the Buddha himself, but they represent the Buddha, different events in the life of the Buddha by means of symbols that are connected with those events. So here, when they're worshiping the tree, this is the Bodhi tree, signifying that the Buddha is invisibly present beneath the tree. Again, figures are paying homage to the tree, but the Buddha is not visibly present here. Here they're paying homage to a casket, presumably with relics of the Buddha. Again, paying homage to the tree. Yeah, these are the monks who came with me. One was Indian, one was from Sri Lanka, and then there was a young novice who came along. That's the novice. Yeah, and this is that stupa, which is constructed in imitation of the old Amaravati stupa. You could see the scenes that were constructed at the base of the stupa in Hyderabad that just were constructed, last year, over the last couple of years. And this one looked very, very similar. And this one, you can see it has some elements of Mahayana Buddhism. This is presumably perhaps Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom, or maybe Tara. Here we have the Buddha represented in person. Again, at this point, the Buddha is represented in person. This must be Prajnaparamita. This was a scene recorded in the suttas or commentaries where there was a sick monk and nobody would take care of him. And the Buddha came himself together with Venerable Ananda to take care of that sick monk, to bathe him, clean his wounds, give him medicine. Apparently a bodhisattva figure, perhaps Maitreya. These are some of the ruins that are from the old monasteries in Nagarjunakonda. A lot of them are broken, just pieces, fragments have remained. But these are the monks who came with me. And this is a pillar with Brahmi inscriptions. Brahmi is the old ancient Indian script. It was used probably in the time of even before the Christian era, before the Common Era, and into the early centuries of the Common Era. And this was the archaeological museum. This is on the island, but inside the museum one is not allowed to take photographs, so I don't have photographs of the objects inside the museum. And then this is the photos I took as we're in the evening when we leave the island and we're coming back to the mainland. You can see it's a gigantic lake. You could almost not see the other side. And it's used to irrigate the fields in this particular part of Telangana state. Okay, when I was staying in Hyderabad, I received an invitation by email from the Mahabodhi Society of India in Bodh, Gaya. They wrote to me, the General Secretary and a professor, that they were planning to hold a conference on January 30th and 31st the theme was Buddhism and the Liberation of Women. And they invited me to come to be a speaker at that conference. And they also were going to hold a Bhikkhuni, actually 2 Bhikkhuni ordinations, one day after the other, in the Laotian temple at Bodh Gaya. This would have been on January 28th and 29th. So I decided, since I was finished now in Hyderabad, and I had 2 weeks before my second retreat in Bangalore, so I decided to go to Bodh Gaya early and spend just some days, leisurely days in Bodh Gaya and making some side trips. But what I found, I have spent several very enjoyable days in Bodh Gaya. Each day I would go about 4 times. I was staying in the Mahabodhi Society, which is right across from the sacred grounds. So each day I would go early in the morning before breakfast to the spot under the Bodhi tree. Under the Bodhi tree there are some patios, and people come there and sit in meditation or in prayer, recitation. And so every day I would go 3 or 4 times to that patio and sit for 30 or 40 minutes. And it was very, very enjoyable experience, even though that time is very noisy in a way, because all of the Tibetan monks from the different Tibetan monasteries throughout India congregate at Bodh Gaya for their ceremonies. They call them Munlam. And so they would all be congregating in different places around the Bodhi tree and doing their chanting. But I didn't mind it too much. It didn't really disturb my meditation very much, because the Tibetan chanting goes something like Rin Chun Chung Ma Jing Ma Jing Ma Jing Ma Jing Ma Chung 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 Jing Ma Ring Bum Bum Chung Chung Ma Chung 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 Chung. So you could be sitting there and meditating quite peacefully, and it has a steady, soothing rhythm. But every once in a while, it would come circling around the Bodhi tree. I would hear, I hope no Thai people here, I don't want to offend, but a group led by a Thai monk, Namo Iti Piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho. And then I would be thinking rather sacrilegiously, shut the F up. Why? I just... Shut your friendly mouth up? Yeah, but I would have liked to take pictures inside the sacred grounds. And the first day I came innocently bringing my camera along, but they do a screening and they say, we're sorry, no cameras allowed inside the sacred grounds. So I didn't get pictures of the inner sanctum of Bodh Gaya, the area around the Bodhi tree. But you can just go to Google Images and put in Bodh Gaya, Bodhi tree, and you'll get plenty of pictures. Okay, so we spent a few days in Bodh Gaya itself. And then we made side trips. I went with Bhante Ananda. He sent a little novice, one of a 16-year-old novice, to accompany me on the travel. So we went, one day we did an overnight trip to Rajgir, Rajagaha, and we ascended this mountain. My intention was actually to go up Vulture's Peak, but I made the wrong choice. I thought that the chairlift was taking me to Vulture's Peak mountain. But it turns out, actually, that there are two mountains next to each other. One is the tall mountain on which the Japanese Buddhist organization has constructed a giant stupa. They call it the Peace Stupa. And Vulture's Peak is actually lower than that big mountain. But from the big mountain, we could see Vulture's Peak. And I have some photos of it from the top of the big mountain. But I made a mistake thinking I was going up Vulture's Peak. But this is not Vulture's Peak. So to go up the big mountain, you go by a chairlift. And then this is the Peace Pagoda built by this Japanese organization. And it has 4 Buddha images, which I think are supposed to represent the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, first discourse, and passing away. Have you been there? Yeah, strangely, for the enlightenment, they should have the Buddha with the hands in the meditation position, but they have the Buddha with the hands joined in Anjali, the gesture of reverence. I don't know why. Yeah, this is the novice. What was it? Sadarakita is his name. You see, it's pretty cool in that part of India in January. Yeah, this is the image of the Buddha representing the enlightenment, but with the hands in the Anjali. Yeah, this is giving the first sermon. This is the passing away. And this is the birth. And this is looking down from the high mountain to the surrounding countryside. I'll show you Vulture's Peak. Yeah, this is Vulture's Peak. You can see it here. Yeah, and this is another shot of Vulture's Peak. And this is near Rajagaha. You know, the Buddhists had a rival school of thought and practice called Jainism. And Jainism was founded by a teacher who was a rival of the Buddha. The founder of Jainism was Mahavira. And this is a temple, a Jain temple, about a half an hour from Rajagaha, a place called Pawapuri. This is the temple which commemorates the exact place where Mahavira passed away. For the Jains, this is the place of Mahavira's parinirvana, his entrance into nirvana. And it's one of, I have to say, the Buddhist places in Rajagaha, very slovenly kept, unkempt, not well maintained, but the Jain temple is maintained impeccably, beautifully. And this spot here is supposed to be the exact place where Mahavira passed away. Another shot. And you see that temple is on the middle of a lake, and there's a walkway which leads from the mainland to the temple of the Parinirvana. These are some guardian deities, perhaps, around that shrine. And this is just the Bengali Buddhist temple where we spent the night. Yeah, and this is the way people travel around in Rajagaha. And during the Buddha's time, Rajagaha, the name itself means the residence of kings, and it was a royal capital. It was the capital of the great state of Magadha, presided over by King Bimbisara and his successor, Ajatasattu. But now it turned into a rather dingy town, and not much going on in Rajagaha except numbers of shops along the roads. Yeah, this is the Bengali monk who is the resident monk at that temple. Yeah, and this is here in modern Hindi, it must be called Venuvan, but in Pali it's Veluvana. This is the bamboo grove where the Buddha lived a lot of the time when he was in the state of Magadha. And the government of Bihar was supposed to renovate the bamboo grove, but it's still hardly any work has been done on it, which perhaps is an advantage since we don't want too many tourists to converge on it. So it's not a major tourist attraction. And so what one finds in Bamboo Grove, there's a painting of apparently this must be King Bimbisara offering the bamboo grove to the Buddha in the symbolic way of pouring water over the Buddha's hands. And then this is the Buddha giving a discourse to the monks at the bamboo grove. This is the novice under a grove of bamboos. And then there is a lake, or pond in the middle of the bamboo grove. Some statues of the Buddha, the pond. And that's it, pretty much. That's all that one finds at Bamboo Grove. Okay, this is a street scene in Rajagaha. See a lot of shops along the roads. But all signs of a thriving royal capital have vanished. Yeah, then from Rajagaha, it's just a short trip to Nalanda. Nalanda was the site of the great Buddhist monastery, which was also a university, where monks from all over Asia would come to study. It became the thriving monastic university, specializing in all the different schools of Buddhist philosophy and practice were represented at Nalanda. And you could see they say that there are various subjects of study like theology, or we call it Buddhology, grammar, logic, astronomy, metaphysics, medicine, and philosophy were taught there. So these are the ruins of the monastery. Yeah, the person who was guiding us at Nalanda told us that this chamber here, that this was the room where the great translator Xuanzang stayed when he studied at Nalanda. He said, because it's bigger than the other rooms, so that must be the reason, their basis for inferring that Xuanzang stayed there. And even though these buildings all just seem like little more than ruins of brick, but there were some shrines that were in, say, fairly remarkably good condition, even though pieces are broken and chipped. Well, here you can see these images have been broken and worn away, probably by the barbarian invaders who attacked and destroyed Nalanda in the, I think, the 11th or 12th century. Yeah, but these images are in very good condition at the top of this shrine. And then at Nalanda, not on the premises of the old university, but a short drive away, is the memorial for the great scholar and translator Xuanzang. And so this is the Xuanzang Memorial Hall, I think constructed by the Chinese government for India. And so it said, Xuanzang belongs to a galaxy of world citizens whose great mission was to interpret for the good of mankind sublime values of human civilization. Here's the text. So that's the hall. This is a monk who is a professor at the new Nalanda University, Venerable Dhamma-jyoti. And then there are panels, a whole set of panels illustrating the life of Xuanzang. Xuanzang even traveled to the giant Buddha statue at Bamiyan in Afghanistan, which was destroyed, I think, in the year 2000, 2001, by the Taliban. They blew it up. It had been a big news event back in those days. But that statue was already there back in the 7th century. And then Xuanzang returned to China, bringing volumes and volumes of Buddhist scriptures with him. And then under the patronage of the emperor, he assembled a team of translators, and together they translated an inconceivable number of Buddhist texts from Sanskrit into Chinese. I guess he's returning to China. When he wanted to leave China, the emperor had forbidden him from leaving, but he managed to slip out of the country and travel to India. Now he returns with great honor and welcome. And I guess that's his passing away. Okay, then from Nalanda, we returned to Bodh Gaya, and then a few days later, together with that novice, we made a trip to Sarnath. Sarnath is the place where the Buddha gave his first discourse, and apparently it was a great flourishing Buddhist center in ancient times. And so we stayed in a Buddhist temple in Sarnath, and these are the monks from the temple. The monk on the right, actually, when I first came to Sri Lanka I came in 1972, and I spent my first rains retreat at a place called Island Hermitage in the south of Sri Lanka. And at that time, there was a Sri Lankan monk there who was sort of my guide and sort of helping me get accustomed to the life of a monk in Sri Lanka. His name at that time was Budhya. Later, he disrobed and went to France to study, but then more recently, he came back to the monastic life. And he is now teaching in India at the Tibetan Institute of Higher Buddhist Studies, which is in Sarnath. And so we met in Sarnath as monks together after separation from 1973 to 2019. So this is him. Now he has the name Sivali, Bhante Sivali. Okay, and these are some of the ruins at the deer park. This is the ruins of the deer park at Sarnath. From the sutras, we know about the deer park only as the place where the Buddha gave the first discourse to the group of 5 monks. Then numbers of other monks came to stay at the deer park and to learn from the Buddha. But otherwise, it doesn't get much mention within the suttas. But apparently, from the number of monastic ruins there, this deer park had been, as I said, the site of several flourishing monasteries, monastic establishments. And King Ashoka in the 3rd century BC established a stupa to mark the place where the Buddha gave his first discourse. We'll see that as we go along. Again, the Brahmi script inscriptions. This is a pillar constructed by King Ashoka. Yeah, this is the Dharmic stupa. This is the stupa that's supposed to mark the place where the Buddha gave his first discourse. And when one looks at it from a distance, it looks just like a block of solid brick or cement and bricks. But as you get close, and you'll see from some of the photographs, there were very subtle, beautiful, intricate design elements around the base of the stupa, which many of them have broken off, but you could still see beautiful, intricate designs. This, they say, the Mulagantakudi, they say that it's a place where the Buddha probably sat in meditation. Again, this is the Dharmic stupa. Yeah, here, this is from the base of the Dharmic stupa. You could see flower designs, lotus flower designs, and sort of this intricate arabesques. All of this is from the base of the Dharmic stupa. Yeah, they think that the old name was the Dharma Chakra stupa. Perhaps it was the place, the spot where Lord Buddha preached his first sermon. This is at Sarnath, in the town, is the Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies. And so one day we went there, we met the Vice Chancellor, the Venerable Samden, and then he invited me to come the next day to give a lecture. And these are some design elements in the library of the Tibetan Institute. But maybe I missed those. Okay, this was when we were staying in Sarnath. One evening, we went into the city of Varanasi, to the bank of the Ganges River. And every evening, every day of the year, they conduct this puja. They call it arti. It's a ceremony of worship of the Ganges River. And there'll be 10 young men, probably trained as Brahmin priests, stand on these platforms while this beautiful chanting is going on over loudspeakers in the background. And they take lamps and lanterns and they swirl them around as offerings to the Ganges. Then they take incense to offer it to the Ganges and flowers to offer it to the Ganges. It's a very beautiful and deeply moving ceremony. And we managed to, crowds descend upon this place where they perform the ceremony. And somehow we managed to wiggle our way through the crowds, and we got good seats very close to the place where the ceremony takes place. You can see the crowds of people that are gathering here. Here, I think, an incense offering. You see the dense crowds. And then this is the offering of lights. You see the crowds extending all the ways up the street here in the back. This is at the Tibetan Institute. And so this is the Vice Chancellor, Venerable Samden, Professor Samden. And this was a Chinese monk that I met first at Bodhgaya, and then we met again at Sarnath. This is Fa Ling, that he visited here in September 2016. And then he was studying in Belgium, and he got his PhD in Belgium at Ghent University. And this is inside the Mulaganta Kuti in Sarnath. This is the temple that was established by the famous Anagarika Dharmapala, the Sri Lankan Buddhist revivalist who came to India and then promoted the revival of Buddhism in India by restoring many of the Buddhist holy places. And this is an outside view of the Mulaganta Kuti. And then this is the next day with some other Sri Lankan monks. Again, we went back to the deer park to make some offerings. And while we were there, we met our friend various groups of pilgrims come. So this is Sarnath and Varanasi. Then back at Bodhgaya, I came back to Bodhgaya on the 28th. And then we arrived back actually the morning of the 28th at 2 a.m. in the morning on the 28th. And that afternoon, some Bhikshuni ordination was to take place. And so I got some photos of the Bhikshuni ordination. There were 24 young women took the Bhikshuni or full ordination as nuns. I think there were 9 from Vietnam, 3 from China, and 12 from Thailand. Or it could have been 12 from Vietnam, 9 from Thailand, 3 from China. I don't remember exactly. This I didn't take, but this is a photo. Apparently, the novice nuns are now receiving instruction in the ordination procedure from the senior nuns. And this is well-known Venerable Dhammananda. She was the first Thai woman to receive Bhikshuni ordination in modern times. And then this is the ordination of the women as nuns performed by the Bhikkhunis. For the nuns, the ordination is performed in 2 stages. First, the Bhikkhunis give the ordination to the candidates. Then after that, then the candidates come to the monks, to the bhikkhus, and the bhikkhus confirm the ordination. So this is the first stage where the Bhikkhunis are giving the ordination to the women. And then now the ordination is taking place in the presence of the bhikkhus, the monks. So that's myself here. And the other monks are sitting on the dais. Okay, from Bodhgaya, then I went back to Bangalore. And at Bangalore, at the retreat center, I gave another 5-day retreat from February 1st to February 5th. And I didn't have anything scheduled from February 7th until February 21st. I was supposed to go to Nagpur. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I had the idea to do a walk in India, but Bhante Ananda, the General Secretary of the Mahabodhi Society, discouraged me. And when I was in Hyderabad, I asked some of the people there, Is it possible to do a walk without any provisions or preparations in India, just relying completely on chance? And they said, Bhante, you're living back 200 years ago. That culture is gone. You just can't do it nowadays. But after my second retreat in Bangalore, when we came back to the Bangalore monastery, I turned to Bhante Ananda and I said, Bhante Ananda, I just can't get the idea of doing that walk out of my mind. So he said, okay, you do the walk, but I make two suggestions. Originally, I was planning to do the walk along the Kaveri River, going eastwards, the lower portion of the Kaveri River. Let me just show you. Okay, I think it's this. Or is it? No. Okay, so this is the full Kaveri River from its origin point to its end point. It runs through, it's a major river of South India, running through almost the entire state of Karnataka and then through Tamil Nadu. Whoops. Yeah, okay, this is a map, a screenshot of the map. So my original intention was to walk from Karur here, which is almost south, directly south of Bangalore, to walk along the Kaveri River to Tanjavur, which is a city with large, ancient Hindu temple. But Bhante Ananda suggested instead that I do the walk in a part of Karnataka state called Korg, also known as Kotagu. And I'll show you that. Oops, let's blow this up. Okay, so this is the state of Karnataka. Here's Bangalore. This is Mysore. And you can see this little region here that I'm tracing with the arrow, with the cursor. This is the region called Kotagu. And the major town or city there is Madikeri. So first he suggested that I do the walk in Korg rather than the eastern part of the Kaveri River, because it's a more beautiful region. And also he said, please take a kapiya along. That's a layperson to help me along the walk. And first I was resistant to that suggestion, because I thought if he assigned somebody to walk with me, and that person doesn't really want to do the walk, but he's doing it just out of a sense of duty, then it creates bad vibrations, and he's unhappy and miserable, yet I have to drag him along with me, so I become unhappy and miserable. So I was reluctant to take a kapiya, but he said, I know a young man who would be quite happy to walk with you, and he's from Karnataka, and so he speaks the language, and so he could help you if you get in any trouble. So I agreed. And so he assigned a young man, I think he was 29 years old, whose name is Nagarjuna. And it's not a Dharma name, but in South India, I think that name is not completely rare. Yeah, so this is a blow-up of the state, of the district, the Korg district. Again, Madikeri is in the middle. And this is our destination, Talakaveri. And you'll see the route in close-up. So here is our route, starting from Madikeri, walking along this route to Talakaveri. Talakaveri means the head of the Kaveri. The Kaveri, that is that major river of South India, and the Talakaveri is the origin point of the Kaveri River. And so that was to be our destination. And so on February, let's get my dates. Yeah, February 7th, we traveled from Bangalore to Mysore. Mysore was to be our takeoff point. And neither of us knew anybody in the state, in the Korg district. But things work out. You see, if you have faith and trust, things work out unexpectedly. And so we got to, in Mysore, there's a branch of the Mahabodhi Society of Bangalore, a school, a Mahabodhi school for young children, which they bring these young children down from the border regions, the states like Arunachal Pradesh, Ladakh, Tripur, some are from Karnataka, and they live in the hostel and they receive very good education. The school has very, very good reputation. Otherwise, living in these border districts, the children would not get the chance to study in a good school. So we traveled by train from Bangalore to Mysore. This would have been on February 7th. This is out of order. See, I got the photos from different cameras, and so I tried to put them in fairly good order, but not perfect. This was something that I thought was very important to take along on the walk. Does anybody read Kannada here? Yeah, Kannada is the language of, the main language of the state of Karnataka. So this was a little sign that I asked them to make for me, which says, I am a Buddhist monk walking on alms round. I do not accept money, only prepared food. May all blessings be with you. And this was a bell that we brought along so that when we were standing outside the house, I had Nagarjuna ring the bell. But it turned out I only had to go on alms round once. I wanted to go more often, but things were planned more than I wanted by other people. Okay, so we're on the train traveling from Bangalore to Mysore. And here we're in Mysore at the children's home. And this man is named Jyoti. He is like the director of the children's school. And he's providing us with some requisites, he and his assistant director, some requisites to take along on our walk. But when you're walking, you have to travel as light as possible. So we wound up taking only a few requisites. And the way things worked out for us, when we got to Mysore, knowing only the children's home in Mysore, Jyoti told me that there is a Buddhist monk, a Karnataka Buddhist monk, living outside Mysore who knows the Korg area, and he could give us some advice. And so he said, please call him and ask him if we could meet him. And so Jyoti called this monk named Venerable Bodhidatta, and Venerable Bodhidatta said that he would come to see us the next day, February 8th. So Bodhidatta came, and not only did he come, but he offered to drive us from Mysore to Madikeri. And he said that he had, this was on February 8th, that was a Friday. He said that he had some meeting in Mysore on the Sunday, I think February 10th, so he couldn't join us on February 10th, but he said he would come back and join us on our walk on February 11th. He didn't quite, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, so when we're driving down, getting close to Madikeri, this is Venerable Bodhidatta in the back here, this is Nagarjuna, and Venerable Bodhidatta has a friend named Ramesh, who has a home for like destitute adults just outside of Madikeri. And so we stopped at that home for a cup of tea, and Venerable Bodhidatta told Ramesh about our plan to do the walk, and Ramesh said that he'll try to help in whatever way he could. So then we continued on. We continued on to Madikeri, and we stayed with a woman. Her name is Mrs. Bhadra. Bhadra. Her husband is a agronomist, I think, who works on developing, a microbiologist who works on developing kinds of food substances to promote a vegan diet. And both of them are great devotees of Satya Sai Baba, who is a Hindu supposed saint who passed away some years ago. But the way this worked out, this Mrs. Bhadra had been living in Mysore, and she had helped the Mahabodhi Children's School in certain ways, either as a teacher or maybe as a principal. And so Jyoti had recommended Mrs. Bhadra to us for us to spend a first night in Madikeri, first 2 nights at her house. She had a vacant apartment in her house. And so we continued on. The first day in Madikeri, Ramesh came and took us around to show us some of the sights around Madikeri. This is called Abbey Falls. Maybe for the people of Madikeri, it's a great spectacular sight, but those of us who know Niagara Falls look at it and think not so impressive, really. This is Ramesh and Nagarjuna. And then we looked at some other parts. And this is the town of Madikeri. It reminds me a bit of Dharamsala, if anybody has been there. Any Sri Lankans, a little bit like Kandy, in between the hills. Here we are on the porch of Mrs. Bhadra. This is Mrs. Bhadra, and this is her grandnephew who is living with her. And we're about to set out on our walk, and she sent her grandnephew to accompany us on the first part of the walk through the town of Madikeri to guide us to the road that leads to our destination, to Talakaveri. And so here we set out on our walk. We walked down through the town of Talakaveri by taking a view of the very beautiful countryside. And this must be the place where we part, where the grandnephew returns to Mrs. Bhadra's home, and Nagarjuna and myself continue on alone. The road signs, if you could read them in reverse, the lowest plank says Talakaveri. So this is the road that we embark on. And here I continue walking down the road. And Mrs. Bhadra very kindly, I wanted to set out early in the morning, because the trick in walking, especially through a relatively hot climate like this part of India, is to do your walking early in the morning, ideally as soon as the sun comes up, but we would get delayed a little bit, but setting out like 7 a.m., walk till about 10 a.m., then rest, take the meal, rest some more, then continue walking, starting from about 3 p.m. So for the first day, Mrs. Bhadra kindly prepared 2 breakfast parcels for us to take along on our walk. And so we set out about 7 a.m. from her house. Then about 8:15, we realized it was time to take the breakfast. And so we found a school. The school hadn't yet started. It must have been 8:15. And so the yard was empty, and we went into the schoolyard onto one of the verandas, and we took a mat. There was a family living on the school. Sadly, if you remember, there were very heavy rains last summer in India, in South India, and those rains caused landslides. And this family, the woman was a teacher at the school, but she had lost her home in a landslide, And so she, her husband and son were living in a room at the school. And so they provided us with a mat and some drinking water and then some fruits after the meal. So we're taking our meal of rice. And then this is the family. She's offering us some little bananas. And then I always recite some blessing for them. And then we continue walking a few hours. And then Ramesh had arranged for us to take our lunch at a farmer's house along the road. And also arranged for us to spend the night at the farmer's house. I was not happy with that, because my intention was to rest a few hours during the middle of the day, then continue walking. But since this arrangement had been made, it would have been unpolite to reject the hospitality. So I felt a little bit like a prisoner. But it turned out maybe for the best, since it was a very nice, pious family. And they're not Buddhists, but they're Hindus. But there's not a strong felt distinction between Hinduism and Buddhism. You know, there's not doctrinal conflicts between them, but they can get along on quite friendly terms. And so here, the woman is serving the lunch, and you can see she's serving on banana leaf. And this is the whole family. Well, actually, she has a son and a daughter. The other boy is a friend of the son. And this is the farmer. It's basically this region of India, what is grown primarily here is coffee. Yeah, so as we're walking, we're passing coffee estate after coffee estate after coffee estate. I'm wondering, when are we going to see something else besides coffee? Occasionally there would be patches where there are paddy fields, but mostly coffee and spices. And this was Ramesh. He had drove down from Madikeri to join the family for that meal. Yeah, and then this is the next morning. You know, we spent the night there, and then the woman very kindly, again, she prepared 2 breakfast parcels for us. And the breakfast parcels are in this blue packet that Nagarjuna is carrying. Okay, so we continue walking along the road, and then at one point along the road there was a group of women, I think 8 women on the other side of the road, and so they called us across, come, come, come. Didn't know what they want, but then they spoke in Kannada language to Nagarjuna, and he told me they want a blessing. So I recited the blessing, Bhavatu Sabha Mangalang, Rakantu Sabha Devata, for each of the women individually. And they were very happy. Okay, as we're walking along, Nagarjuna, he has his cell phone, and he gets a call from Ramesh, who Ramesh was going to come and make some provision for our lunch that day. But he gets a call from Ramesh saying, I'm very busy now, I won't be able to come and to arrange the meal for you or to arrange a place for you to stay for the night. And Nagarjuna was getting worried and upset, thinking, what are we going to do for the meal? What are we going to do for a place to stay? But I knew I had my alms bowl. The meal is no problem. Just have to go on alms round. Maybe a little early because people are not accustomed to it, but I had my sign and confidence that I could get enough food to feed the both of us. And so we're walking along, and I am sort of doing this as a meditative exercise, reciting in my mind, Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho, Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho. And as we're walking along, a motorcycle passes us on the road, then turns and stops in front of us. And first, a little wave of fear comes over me. Maybe I'm thinking back to the American days of the Hells Angels. Thinking a tough motorcyclist is going to get off and say, what are you punks doing? But the man lifts off his helmet and introduces himself as a lecturer in economics at a college along the road. And he says that he passed us on the road yesterday and he's wondering what we're doing. And so we tell him, actually he spoke some English also, but I think he was speaking mainly in Kannada with Nagarjuna. So he told him what we're doing, and then the man says, let me get your number, I'll make some arrangement for you. Okay, so then we continue, he travels on further down the road, then after some time Nagarjuna gets a call telling him that at a certain point we're going to pass, lack of mindfulness. We're going to pass a farmer's bank. Then he said we should continue a little further. Then we'll see a house under construction. And then a little further, there'll be another house. And he will meet us there. At first I assumed that would be his house, but we continued walking. He was there with another man. It wasn't his own house, but this man was a friend of his. And so he introduced us to that man, and they invited us to come and take our meal there. And this man is a farmer also, and guess what he cultivates? Coffee farmer. And this would be his wife, and that is, I think that's their daughter-in-law and the grandchild. Yeah, so these are photos outside the house. I thought that I made. Let me try to get the photos inside the house. Okay, I can't find it, doesn't matter. I just wanted to get a photo inside the house of them serving the meal. Okay, so we continue after the meal. We wait a few hours. They gave us a room to stay, to take a little rest until the heat of the day passes. And so about 3 o'clock, we again start walking along the road to Talakaveri. Yeah, and then at a certain point, okay, that economics lecturer, again, he called Nagarjuna and told us he had made arrangements for us for a place to spend the night. And he actually met us along the road with a vehicle belonging to some friends of his, and said, come on, get in the vehicle and we'll take you to that place. And I said, no, we're going to walk there. So then he said, okay, in that case, we'll meet you at a certain place further down the road. So we continued walking, and then by about maybe 5:30, we're getting a little tired, and we came across this very nice, it looked like a very nice coffee shop along the road called the Sunrock Coffee Shop. And so we just thought we would go inside. They had a veranda that we would sit on the veranda and rest a little bit. And the woman who greeted us, very warm and friendly greeting, then offered us, would you like some coffee or tea? So Nagarjuna had coffee, I had tea. And she told us she had just opened that coffee shop just 1 month earlier. And here she's paying homage together with, she had 2 daughters with her. And notice the school uniform, yellow and green. And then I recite some blessing, and she said that she recognizes the words because she probably knows some Sanskrit, and the words in Pali and Sanskrit are similar. Yeah, and so here we are outside the coffee shop. And if you ever travel through Kotagu State, going to Talakaveri, and you want to stop for a cup of coffee, it's a very, very clean, very neatly, well-stocked coffee shop. And the woman's just very warm, kindly, and friendly. And so this is the place, the bungalow, where we spent that second night of our walk. It's a very well-constructed bungalow with several rooms, bathrooms, and it's surrounded by fields where they're cultivating. What are they cultivating in the fields? Coffee, but also flowers. So this is the morning after we spent the night there, before we set out walking again. Now we're walking up the road that leads from the bungalow back to the main road. And this shows that this is the way the terrain must have looked before all of this wild growth was cut down to cultivate coffee. So this morning, there wasn't anybody to provide the breakfast for us. So this was the morning when I had the chance to go on alms round. So when we hit the main road, then I rolled up my robe in the formal style. And this man, who was actually known to our economics lecturer, came. He knew that we were staying at the bungalow, so he came deliberately to meet us there to provide an offering of food. And then next, I went to another house, and the people didn't know what I was doing, but Nagarjuna explained, and then they went and they got some chapati and offered it into my bowl. And then I went across the street. There was still another house, and this was interesting. First, I was standing there, and the woman didn't know what I was doing, but Nagarjuna explained to her. And then she said, first, would you like a glass of milk? And then I said that I'm not accustomed to drinking milk first thing in the morning. And then she said, can I offer you some like chapati or roti and curry? I said, okay. And then she said, why don't you come up to, this is what she said. She said, would you come up and take your meal here? And I said, okay. And so he came up here. And then when she looked at me, she said, my mother is no more, my father is no more, but when I see you, I feel that my mother and father are still with me. And then this is her daughter. And notice the same yellow and green uniform. So the daughter must be going to the same school as the girls from the coffee shop. And so they offered us the roti and it must be a beetroot curry that they prepared. And then this is the woman. And very warm-hearted, very devout. Again, they're from a Hindu background. And what she told me, she said that what especially delighted her, she said that sometimes ascetics come by, sannyasis, and they ask for money. And she says, if I give 100 rupees, they scold me for not giving more. But she was so delighted that I would only accept food, no money. And then she told us that this day her daughter was having her final examination. So she thought it was like a special blessing that we had come by just on that day. Okay, so this is the breakfast. We have the breakfast there. Then we continue walking along the road, and then at a certain point, we see down the road, our economics lecturer is standing there as though he's waiting for us, and this is him. This is a little boutique, a little shop, very close to his college. And so it's getting close to lunchtime, and so he's offering us, this is a sour, what do they call this? The sour milk? Buttermilk. Lassi. Yeah, and here we're standing in front of the sign. This comes out reverse. And then he brought us to this inspector's bungalow for our lunch that day. And here I'm giving him a blessing. And then the lunch is served. And then we rest. During the middle of the day after the meal, we rest in this bungalow. And here, finally, it's quite hot that day. So I have the chance to take a shower and then to wash my clothes, the dusty robes and clothes, and hang them out to dry. And it was so hot that they dried, everything dry in an hour. And then when we come out from that bungalow, when we start walking down the road, then a car pulls up behind us, and in the car is that man Ramesh and Venerable Bodhidatta, the monk who had originally sort of given us some advice. And so they accompanied us as we came to the town called Bhagamandala. This is the last big town on that road before one starts ascending the mountain to the origin of the Kaveri River. So here we're entering the town through the town gate. And this is the Kaveri River in the town of Bhagamandala, where it's joined by two other streams. They call it a trisangam, a meeting of three streams. And there's a big temple in Bhagamandala. This is Bodhidatta, Bhante Bodhidatta, myself. Yeah, now I think we're entering that temple. Yeah, this is the big Hindu temple because there's a god associated with that spot where the Kaveri River converges with the other two streams. And now we're walking up the hill or the mountain that's taking us to Talakaveri. Venerable Bodhidatta didn't continue with us all the way up because this was an 8-kilometer walk and it's now like 5:30 in the evening, so we could only walk halfway up. But somebody had made arrangements for us at a place to spend the night halfway up the mountain. And so we continue walking up the mountain till we reach this coffee shop, coffee and spice shop, where we are to spend the night. And so this is Mr. Ramesh and two of his friends and Venerable Bodhidatta. They're offering some dark chocolate and they offered some fruits. Then they returned and they went back to Mysore, and we spent the night on the upper story of this coffee shop. It was like a little apartment that they provided for us. And this is the next morning on the roof outside of the coffee shop, outside the apartment. They served us a very nice breakfast. This is the son of the woman who owns the shop. And this is the woman, her son, and myself outside the coffee shop. Again, if you're climbing up the ascent to Talakaveri, if you need a coffee shop, there's a very nice place. Just some views. Along this walk, it starts to get quite steep, so we have to pause every once in a while just to catch our breath. Climbing, going higher. It's a very beautiful country, you could see. These are what they call the Western Ghat Mountains. Whoops. Yeah, and then now I have to find the other pictures because they've gotten out of order. Okay, yeah, so we came to at the place where the Kaveri River originates. Of course, it's considered a sacred place because everything, all the natural phenomena in Indian tradition are considered to have some divine significance. And so there's a big temple surrounding the origin point of the Kaveri. And then just outside that temple, maybe about 200 yards away, there is an ashram called the Kailasha Ashram. And I think it was our economics lecturer made arrangements with the resident caretaker of that temple, for us, of that ashram, for us to spend the night there. And so we arrived at the temple, must be about 10:30, 11 o'clock. And so the resident, he calls himself Swami Ravi Kavindra, I think. But I don't think he's an ordained Swami, because he's not wearing the ochre robe, but the white robes. So this is the main building of the ashram. And there's a kind of shrine to the god, the elephant god, Ganesh. He is a devotee of Ganesh. So this is the ashram, and here in the distance, this is the large Talakaveri temple, which surrounds the origin point of the river. And right here is a mountain that we're going to climb the next day called Brahmagiri Mountain, which takes us way up to the top, and you could see the countryside all around. Some more of the ashram, the Ganesh shrine. Yeah, now we are entering the Talakaveri temple. And again, you're not allowed to take photographs in the inner sanctum of the temple, but I did manage to get some photographs of the place where the river originates. Yeah, this is the place where the river originates. I think it comes out it must come from underground here. There must be some kind of spring. And then this forms this pool, and then the pool flows down and descends the mountain. And then it becomes a gigantic river flowing through all of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Whoops, yeah, this is from the outside, the Kailasa ashram. And this is the Ganesh. Here's Ganesh, the elephant god. You can see very beautiful countryside. Oops. And this is from the road looking up to the Talakaveri temple. Oh, this must be. Yeah. Okay, this is the next day. We climbed the Brahmagiri mountain. According to tradition, there were 7 rishis, like sages, who were meditating on that mountain. And on that mountain, they had a vision of the god Mahabrahma. And so it's called Brahmagiri. Yeah, so we're up here, looking all around. This is the next day. Oh, this is several days later, outside Mysore. I wanted to do the movie. Yeah, this gives a panoramic view from the Brahmagiri mountain. Oh, I know why the photos came out of sequence. I missed the eye. Yeah, okay. So on our last day at Talakaveri, then the man Ramesh came down with his family to pick us up and drive us back. So this is his father, his wife, and this is Swami Ravi, the superintendent of the ashram, and Nagarjuna, and myself. And so as we're driving along the road, it's sort of like going back in time. We're passing each of the milestones that we had passed walking down, but now it's all going past very quickly, like we're turning back in time, but time is speeded up 100-fold until we get back to Mrs. Bhadra's house, and we spend the night there. This is her sitting room with the dog. So we spend the night there. Again, this is Mrs. Bhadra, her servant, another dog. And then the people from the Mahabodhi in Mysore take us back to Mysore. Yeah.
What was your original plan with all those arrangements? How did you stay the night? What was your original plans without all those, arrangements?
Without those arrangements to spend the night?
Yes.
Just to stand around till somebody asks what you're doing, and then say we need a place to spend the night. Okay, now. Okay, so we went back to Mysore. We spent a few days in Mysore, then back to Bangalore, then from Bangalore to Nagpur. So this becomes like another stage. How do I get back to my directory? Where do you get the directory? Okay, this is it. Okay, the last phase of the trip was to go to Nagpur. And at Nagpur, this is the site of the mass conversion movement to Buddhism from the people that were formerly called untouchables, or what were they also called? The untouchables, the outcasts. The Dalits. So there was a man born late in the 19th century named Ambedkar, who grew up in a very poor family, a family of the so-called untouchables, but he must have been very brilliant. He went to school, they wouldn't even let him into the classroom. He had to sit outside the door listening to the lessons, but he became so intelligent, so capable, that he went to the US to get a PhD from Columbia University, or a Doctor of Law degree, or economics, Doctor of Economics. Then he went to London and got another degree from University of London. And then he came back to India, and because of his accomplishments and education, he was the foremost, the chief architect of the Indian Constitution. And he realized that under the Hindu caste system, the Dalits would always be the oppressed, despised, polluted caste. And so he wanted to bring himself and his people out of Hinduism, outside the caste system, by embracing another religion. And so he studied the different religions of the world, Islam, Christianity, and so on, and Buddhism. And the one that appealed to him the most was Buddhism. So in 1956, he made a formal determination that in a formal ceremony, he would reject Hinduism and embrace Buddhism, and he urged his followers, the Dalit community, to do the same. So there was a large conversion ceremony in Nagpur in October 1956, whereby first Dr. Ambedkar took the 3 refuges and 5 precepts from an eminent Burmese Buddhist monk living in India, and then he turned to his own followers and gave them the 3 refuges and 5 precepts, as well as some other guidelines for escaping the Hindu caste system. And so for that reason, Nagpur has become the site. Well, after the conversion of Dr. Ambedkar, there are several other large conversion ceremonies. So now there are millions of Buddhists concentrated in the state of Nagpur. And so I was invited. There is a British Buddhist by the name of Lokamitra who came to India and established a Buddhist center there in order to train Indian Buddhists, the new Indian Buddhists, to train them in Buddhist teachings and to make them kind of emissaries of the Dharma. Because Dr. Ambedkar passed away 6 weeks after he embraced Buddhism, and so he didn't really have a chance to nurture the new Buddhist community in Buddhist teachings. And sadly, the Buddhist monks from the traditional Buddhist countries didn't take advantage of this opportunity to come to teach the new Buddhists. But it's this young man from Great Britain who came and established this center, starting with small beginnings, which gradually grew, till it's quite a thriving community. It's called Nagaloka, the world of the Nagas. And so I came, he invited me to come there to give some talks, and they would arrange the symposium on engaged Buddhism. And so I came there, and then one day we went to visit. This is the Diksha Bhumi, the place where Ambedkar and the Untouchables all converted to Buddhism. So this is the stupa that's constructed there. So this is the central memorial of Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar. And these are the grounds of the Diksha Bhumi. And this was a New Zealand bhikkhuni named Adimuti, who was also staying at Nagaloka at the time that I was there. And then while I was there was a symposium was held on engaged Buddhism. And so there's an Australian Buddhist nun named Aya Yeshi who also has come to Nagpur, and she is helping to uplift the poor women by establishing a center called Bodhicitta Center. And my organization, Buddhist Global Relief, we have a very close partnership with Bodhicitta Foundation. We provide them with assistance to develop programs for training, teaching young women as well as elder women, providing food relief to the children. So we had this symposium which begins with, let me show you the grounds of Nagaloka. Yeah, this is the campus. This is, I guess, a bird's eye view of the campus. And there's a giant standing Buddha image at the edge of the campus, which was constructed by a Taiwanese sculptor. So it's in Taiwanese style, but it's a walking Buddha. You see several buildings. They have a lecture hall, classroom building, dormitories, guest room. Yeah, this is the standing Buddha image. Another view. And this must be some festival is taking place. And that's the statue of Dr. Ambedkar. Yeah, so one day we had the symposium with different speakers on different aspects of the thought of Dr. Ambedkar and the way the Buddhists are working to spread Buddhism in India and the kind of interpretation of Buddhism that's coming through this, through the Dalit community, the way it was explained by Lokamitra, like whereas we, the Western Buddhists, often think of Buddhism as a path to personal fulfillment and inner peace, for the Dalit Buddhists, the former untouchable Buddhists, Buddhism is primarily a way of affirming their own value as human beings, of affirming their human dignity in the face of oppression, exploitation, degradation inflicted upon them by the higher caste Hindus. And this man here is a very, very remarkable man. He is completely blind. You see, he's looking, you could look at his eyes, yet he's an outstanding Pali and Sanskrit scholar. He says he cannot read anything at all. He learns everything from people reading to him. But on that basis, I have it in my room. He's written about a 400-page book on comparative study of Pali and Sanskrit grammar, as well as a number of scholarly articles. He is a professor at Pune University.
He's a friend of Venerable Dhamma.
Yeah, Venerable Dhammadeva told me about him.
I met him too.
You met him too. Yeah, so this was the symposium. And then the next day after the symposium, I was to give a public talk. And you wouldn't say, why don't we have this in New York? So this is on a road in Nagpur. It says, public Dharma talk by the Venerable Bhante Bhikkhu Bodhi from New York, America. Then it gives the date, time, and place. No, this is still a symposium. Yeah, so this is the sort of the lecture hall at the Nagaloka. You see, it's very beautifully constructed. And where does the money come to construct these buildings? I'll tell you, I see all of the dedication stones on the walls of these buildings, and they say, for the construction of this building, we thank, and I'm going to make the name up, Mr. and Mrs. Jiang Ju Fang of Taiwan. The name is made up, but the point is that Lokamitra often travels to Taiwan and meets with the Taiwanese Buddhists who have the money to help the Indian Buddhists construct these facilities. And you can see that there's very intense interest in Buddhism. Like I give a class here, we get like 20, 25 people. Here we have a lecture with several hundred people. Of course, that has a roadside sign. I think this is the symposium again. No, this is where I'm going to give the lecture, but they have some girls come and do some singing. And that's the audience. Okay, and then while I am staying at Nagaloka, one day I went to visit Aya Yeshe at her Bodhicitta Foundation. And then she showed me the kind of work that she is doing with the assistance of Buddhist Global Relief. So here I'm arriving at her own little vihara, and the man in the back here, he translates for her from Marathi, that's the language of Maharashtra, or Hindi, into English. Yeah, so we go in and do a chat a little bit. And then we have the meal, and then after the meal, then her team of, her staff of the Bodhicitta Foundation comes, and she asks each of them to tell me their story of how they became involved with the Bodhicitta Foundation. And these women, even though they're coming from the Dalit or the untouchable, so-called untouchable class, some of them seem to be fairly well educated. And you'll see, this little girl was following us every place, and she has radiantly beautiful smile. If you look at American children, you wouldn't see a smile so radiant and beautiful, but you'll see the photo of her living conditions. So here where Aya Yeshe is taking me on a tour, she has her training centers spread out over several locations in this section of Nagpur. So what she has set up for the training of women to give them livelihood opportunities, one is a beauty center where they learn cosmetics and hairstyle and so on. Another is a computer training center, and a third is a sewing center where they do tailoring, learn tailoring. So this must be the beauty center. Yeah, this is that little girl with that beautiful radiant smile. And this is a typical street in this part of Nagpur, kind of a really decrepit, crumbling part of the city. Yeah, and this is the home of this little girl. It's just like 2 rooms, and she has her parents, 2 grandparents, and her brother and herself are all living in this 2-room apartment. But look how bright and beautiful her smile is. If here, say, American girl doesn't get her new cell phone, she's miserable. And here I'm just getting a tour of the streets of this part of Nagpur. Yeah, another little apartment where this girl is living together with, I think, her brother, mother, and several other siblings. She's going to do there's going to be a program in the evening, and she's going to do the classical Indian dance, and so she's dressed up that way. And Aya Yeshe considers this girl to be like her foster daughter, even though her mother is still alive. And the girl, she's 18 years old, and she's studying in high school, planning to become a medical doctor. So she wants to go on to medical school. And now we arrive, this is the Bodhicitta hostel, where Aya Yeshe brings 30 young women, mainly in their late teens, early 20s, from different parts of India, come there in order to receive training to become social workers, to learn their rights according to the Indian Constitution, to learn, personality development, and so forth, so that they can go back and become leaders in their own communities. So there are several nuns around. And these are the girls in the training program. And she showed me the rooms that they live in. They have upstairs, there are 3 large rooms, and 10 girls live in each room. So there's very little room to do anything there, but just to lie down to sleep. But during the day, they all go out to their different training centers, and then they come back in the evening. And then in the evening, there was a program, entertainment program, dancing. There's more to this. This is just the farewell. You have to go through it again. This was the meeting with the women who were the staff, the helpers of Ayya Yeshe. And they seemed to be very strong and capable women. Yeah, that must be the cosmetic center again. Yeah, I think outside the cosmetic center, again the home of that little girl. Again, the streets of Nagpur. And this would be the sewing center. And at these centers, Ayya Yeshe would ask these girls and young women to tell me their stories, and they're really like heartbreaking. Like some of them, like the father would have killed the mother and ran away, or the mother got cancer in her childhood and died, and nobody to take care of them. They would move from family member to family member, never feeling loved in their life. Really heartbreaking stories. Yeah, these are the girls in the training who stay in that hostel. Yeah, this is now back to the evening program. And then people come from all over the neighborhood to watch the program. Yeah, they had some girls to show that they can speak in English. And then that was the girl doing the Indian dancing, traditional style Indian dancing. These girls were doing more the, what do they call it? Bollywood style dancing, the modern Indian dancing. Then I had to give a little talk, which was translated by this man, Mahendra. And now it's getting dark.
Mahesh actually came here.
Oh, did he?
Yes. I was the one who organized
Oh,
it.
I didn't know that.
He came here.
Okay, and now we're finished. So from Nagpur, I came back to the US. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Yeah.
As you walked, was there any surprises for you, or what was it that you didn't expect, or what was the big surprise?
The big surprise?
Or what did you learn really?
I think the big surprise for me was the really happy moment was when we got the word, when Nagarjuna got that call from Ramesh that he can't come to take care of our arrangements for that day. And then, as I said, I was walking along just thinking, sort of meditatively thinking, Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho, Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho. And then that motorcycle passes and stops in front of us, and almost like a deity sort of coming down from the heavenly world. Can we take care of you for the rest of the day? That was one thing. And the other thing was that woman who, when I went on alms round, when she said, my father is no more, my mother is no more, but when I see you, I feel like my mother and father are with me. And then what I didn't say earlier, she was talking to Nagarjuna, and she doesn't speak in English, but it was translated, that she told Nagarjuna that she has cancer and that she is going to Kerala, that's the nearby state, a hospital in Kerala, to take treatment. And that really moved me very much because she seemed to be like so warm and devout and kind-hearted. And then she has that girl who might be about 12 years old. So I was really hoping that, like in the suttas, or maybe the commentaries, the merit of her offering of that breakfast to us would become the karmic force that will turn the cancer around. But we don't know, yeah. Yeah, in the back. Please take the microphone.
Now that you've done it, did it satisfy your passion? And number two, now that you've done it with quite a bit more planning than you expected, do you think you could have done it without the planning?
Okay, first question. I'm not completely satisfied. I still have that route, the lower portion of the Kaveri River. It's still sort of itching the back of my mind. And whether I can do it, actually, whether it can be done without planning, I have 100% confidence it can be done without planning. I would need 2 signs. If I were to do the lower half of the Kaveri River, it would have to be in the Tamil language. I think, again, one is saying that I'm a monk on alms round, maybe 3 signs that I only accept food, not money. The second sign would have to say that I'm a monk on charika, or padayatra, sort of a pilgrimage walk, and I need a place to stay for the night. And then the third sign would say that I need water, drinking water. And I think with those 3 signs in the Tamil language, it can be done.
There are 2 unwritten but displayed signs with you already in India.
Yeah.
One is your ochre robes.
Yeah.
They worship ochre robes.
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Second, the color of your skin. You're from USA.
Well, they won't know that I'm from the USA unless there's some conversation.
Color of the skin.
Yeah, yeah. So they might take, but in fact, most of it, so often, it wasn't this robe, it was the other robe, which is closer to, not quite as maroon as that, but a little more reddish than this. So some of the people that we met on the walk would ask whether we are from Bailukuppe. Bailukuppe, that is a town near Mysore, between Mysore and Madikeri, where the Tibetan monks, refugee exile monks, have re-established their own their old monastic universities, like Sarah J, Sarah May, what is it, Drapulang, Ming, I don't remember all the names of them, but they've been re-established there. So they would assume that I was a Tibetan monk, yeah. But then Nagarjuna would explain that I'm American monk.
Sir, is it because of the money that they want all the time, which you mentioned?
Because of
Those sadhus,
Yeah.
monks in India,
yeah,
they're after money.
yeah,
And as you mentioned,
yeah,
that really maligns the very, appearance of
Yeah.
everyone.
yeah,
But when somebody goes with a big sign,
yeah,
I don't want money,
Yeah.
all I want is little food for now.
yeah,
Not in bulk, but just for now.
yeah,
That really, really impresses Indians in their core.
yeah, yeah,
And they can then do
Yeah.
anything. for it.
yeah,
So if you go next time, just without any planning or anything,
Yeah.
with a little bowl,
Yeah.
with that sign,
yeah,
you will have no trouble whatsoever.
yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
I go like this, I'll have all.
Yeah, of course, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Were you ever worried, because Westerners, when they go to India, they're worried about the food?
Wait, maybe take the microphone. Oh, okay, he has a question first. Then
Yes, Bhante. How long was the walk from the beginning to the end?
Yeah, I have to say rather sadly, it was only 4 days.
Now, how many distance?
The distance, It was probably, what? Yeah, but we did some side walking, so altogether it was probably 50 kilometers, which is roughly 30 miles. So it wasn't, I actually expected, in fact, when Venerable Bodhidatta told us to take this route, he said that it would be 80 kilometers and should take us 8 days. So I didn't think it would take 8 days to cover 80 kilometers. But it turned out to be like 50 kilometers, counting the sidewalks, the side routes that we took. Yeah, so it was 1, 2, 3, 4 overnights. But next time, if I'm in health, good enough health, it should be 8, 10, or even 12 days. Maybe 10 days should be enough.
Have any of the,
Wait, okay.
that was loud. Have any of those relics been tested for DNA?
No.
Speaking of DNA, speaking of relics,
Yeah.
you said
I think what you have to mean would be carbon dating to determine whether they come from 2,500 years ago.
you mentioned about your fear about those stairs, the stairs that you
Oh, climbing up the stupa, going up to the stupa, yeah.
So since the relics were present there,
Yeah.
how could the power of Buddha not be there?
Yeah, it wasn't a real fear, but it just seemed rather unsteady, sort of was shaking under us as we were climbing up.
I had a question about food. A lot of Westerners are worried about Indian food when they go there.
Yeah.
Were you worried at all when you were standing with your arms bowl? What kind of food will I get? Will I be able to eat it or not? Because diet, depending on the state and the family, can vary a lot. Did that ever concern you?
That was a concern before I went on the walk. But after I was in India, I saw that at least the places where I was staying, the food was always cooked well. So, and the water that's given is always bottled water. And I was always making sure that it looked like the caps were really sealed, not that they were filling with tap water. So I was pretty confident that there wouldn't be problems.
It wasn't hot, spicy hot.
The food. First of all, don't forget I'm a veteran of 23 years in Sri Lanka.
Oh, yes.
I think the only place that I've encountered food that was too hot for me to take was a Sichuan restaurant in Flushing. Yeah, but it wasn't really terribly spicy. Or let's say it was spicy, but not terribly hot, not with too much chilies.
I was just curious about the relics. What is the history? They're distributed throughout many places throughout the world, or how does that work?
Okay, after the Buddha passed away, I believe the relics were divided into 8 portions, or is it 12 portions? And these portions were given to the heads of the different states and through which the Buddha had wandered. And the rulers of these states put the relics in stupas, these memorial mounds. Then it said that King Ashoka, when he became the king, took these relics and divided them up into 84,000 portions. That's what they say. But of course the number is an exaggeration, but into many smaller portions, and then distributed them throughout India. And then somehow the relics have moved from India to the Buddhist countries of Southeast Asia. But there's a little something mystical story behind these relics. Believe it or not, up to you. They say that when the relics are truly venerated with great faith and devotion, and one makes regular offerings to them, after some time, the relics replicate themselves. So that if you start off, say, with 3 relics, 3 pieces of relic in a shrine, and one is venerating it deeply, over time one might open the casket and look inside, and there's 5 pieces. And so then the relics can be, pieces of the relics can be given to other monasteries for them to build the stupas. And then over time, those can duplicate. And so I think if one were to gather all of the existing Buddha relics in the world into one place, you might need a big, big room to accommodate them.
Relics came here to this monastery a few years ago.
Oh, on that,
From Canada.
probably there was this relic tour.
Yeah, because they were raising money
Yeah.
for the Maitreya Buddha.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
So the relics came here, right in the great Buddha.
And there was an interesting story about one of the sets of relics in that exhibition. They had these little pieces of bone that they say were the relics of Venerable Ananda. And of course, they were keeping them very carefully. Then, like one day, they came down to look at the relics, and in that little casket where they were keeping the relics of Ananda, on top of the little pieces of bone, there was, it looked like a pearl, a fairly large pearl, which would have been a kind of mystically created relic that had developed out of those little pieces of bone.
I have a question. Is if until nowadays, but they
A
still
question
think
about what?
Nowadays you still can walk alone there.
Can still walk?
Walk alone in India, as you say, you walk. You can get your food and
Yeah.
get your sleep at the night.
Yeah.
Still possible.
I showed that it was possible.
And you don't get lost.
Don't get.
Lost on the road. Something.
Well, we knew what the road was. I mean, it's a straight road from Madikeri to Talakaveri. So there's no possibility of getting lost on that road.
So you think you still can walk alone, only one of yourself, and then for a few days?
Maybe she means safety-wise.
Yes, yes.
Safety-wise,
That you are alone and you're safe.
yeah, in that part of India, I would say it's completely safe. I wouldn't suggest doing it in certain states in North India, like especially Bihar. There was a British monk named Suchito from Amaravati, who many years ago, maybe the 1990s, together with a Kappiya, a layman, they did a long walk, maybe over several months, in the state of Bihar. And they got caught, I don't remember the details, but they got caught by these bandits and almost killed.
Oh, sorry.
But South India, the Karnataka state where I was walking, is very, very safe.
So if next time you have a chance, you will walk alone or you will get a partner with you?
Or I would get,
You have a chance to walk again.
if I could, maybe I will get the chance, yeah.
Yeah, you
What
want,
she means is that
you want
you
to,
next time go there,
Yeah.
will you dare to walk alone? Or
oh,
need
you,
some
yes.
company?
I would have no fear about walking alone. If I had somebody accompanying me, if it was a congenial person, that would be okay too.
I think a two is better.
A tour,
Two person walk
two.
together. Thank you.
but I don't have any fear for safety walking alone. The only thing, the advantage of having a person who knows the language is to be able to get things that I need. That was annoying me, actually. I was almost ready to say to Nagarjuna, turn that thing off. Okay, I think it's time for us to wrap up. Okay, so thank you all for your attention.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming. And if you want some food before you have the roll, it's in the refreshment room, okay? And I need some volunteer to help me put back the chairs. Thank you very much.